For my last video, Adata sent me a sample of their S70 Blade SSD, which actually ended up performing really well in pretty much every single benchmark I did. But in the past, some SSD manufacturers were caught doing some very questionable things with their products, like costing down and just secretly changing components for much cheaper ones, and then after the reviews have rolled out. And Adata here was not a stranger to those particular customs. So we decided to just order a retail version from Amazon and see if there is an actual difference between the sample that I bought and the sample that Adata sent me. So let's see what happened. Let's go. This video is brought to you by Seasonic and their Prime series power supplies. These top quality power supplies are very efficient, they're whisper quiet, extremely reliable, and my go-to choice for most of my test rigs and builds around here. And to make the deal even sweeter, Seasonic wraps it all up in a cozy 12-year-long warranty. Check them out using the links in the description below. So while it's actually pretty common for an SSD to change a little bit over a period of time, usually because the supply of memory modules changes as well, some manufacturers just decided to intentionally cost down to much cheaper components, which then resulted in drives that were just performing completely different from what reviewers had tested. And Adata was actually one of the worst offenders there. With their previous high-end SX8200 drive, they changed pretty much every single component several times without ever changing the product name or even just calling it a revision. So you had absolutely no idea what you were buying. Now, I actually bought one of them a few years ago, but when I tested my unit, it performed so badly I decided to return it, and I just assumed that it was a faulty unit because that can happen. And keep in mind, I bought it for a review and actually tested it because many people just buy it and don't really test their SSDs at all. It wasn't until later that it became known that Adata has been changing their product constantly, and it just created a huge backlash. Now today I'm only going to focus on differences between these two drives. If you want to see how this drive compares to other Gen 4 SSDs, do check my review. I will leave a link somewhere down below. Anyways, if we look at the boxes, they actually seem pretty identical. They slapped a PS5 sticker on the sample, but other than that, the front and the back have the exact same information on it. Now, based on the barcode and the serial number on the drive, it does look like one that I bought in a shop came from a slightly older batch, which kind of makes sense. Adata probably ships their samples directly from their HQ, while retail stores have a whole supply chain behind them and might have them on a shelf for a while. Now, looking at the SSDs themselves, I don't really see many changes either. The BCB and all secondary parts look exactly the same, and the controller, DRAM, and flash memory all seem to be similar. There are again some slight differences in the exact markings on them, but that again just suggests it came from a different batch. It is not a different component. However, the stickers are different, and as you can see, the retail unit was made in China while the sample unit was made in Taiwan. But let's look at the performance. In the lighter PCMark 10 test, the performance is very similar. Now, the one that I bought actually turned out slightly faster than the one that Adata sent over, but the difference is less than 1%, so it's not really that relevant. In the more intense PCMark 10 Suite test, it's pretty much the same picture. Both the sample and the bought one perform very similar, with a less than 1% difference between them. Sequential performance is identical between the two drives as well. Both in sequential reads and write speeds, there is just nothing that really separates the two. But in the PCMark consistency test, the original sample performed extremely well, coming in second with only the Corsair MP600 Pro ahead of it. But the retail model performed really poorly, sitting nearly at the bottom of the graph alongside budget SSDs. And even though this test is not really that relevant for most people out there, and it only applies to a very small number of use cases, that is such a huge difference. So I wanted to make sure that it is correct. Now, we ran the test several times with both drives, then after a clean format, also on another system to exclude any of the other parts, and we kept getting the exact same result. We also ran it with a proper large heatsink to eliminate the risk of overheating, plus then with another fan on top. And both drives showed very similar thermals and were nowhere near problematic. The retail SSD was a little bit older and was shipped with an older firmware than the sample that we got, but we tested both with the firmware that they originally came with and also both with the very latest firmware that was found on their website. And again, the results were still exactly the same. We also retested them with both drives being 80% full, and this showed very similar performance in the light and medium heavy PC Mark 10 test, with the send sample again performing much better in the multi-hour consistency test, but the retail sample was actually performing better while it was 80% full than while it was empty, which is very odd. So it seems possible that there is either a sample-specific issue with the unit that I bought, but then I would kind of expect it to show some performance loss in other tests as well. Or maybe it's just a different batch of memory or maybe controllers that just affects consistency performance and that Adata didn't do enough validation to catch that. But also remember that it was the older batch that performed worse and that it was made in a completely different factory. So it is also possible that they found this issue and then fixed it with more recent batches, or maybe they do just send slightly better samples to reviewers. We don't know. But while it doesn't really look like Adata is doing anything that is that intentionally shady here, seeing one sample suggesting it's a top-tier workstation drive, while the other one completely tanks when struts for hours, just causes doubt in my opinion. And with so much competition and so many good SSDs on the market, this is the last thing that Adata needs. So personally, if the price is right and you won't use it as a serious workstation drive, it is definitely worth considering. But if you are after a workstation drive specifically, I'd wait to see how all this plays out before buying it, or just going for a different model to be safe. So I don't think anyone who already bought one should be worried in any way, but my opinion and recommendation has slightly shifted after testing the retail unit. So yeah, take it as it is. And this is where I'm going to leave it today. If you have any ideas why this is or why this might be happening, please do leave a comment down below. I would love to know what you guys think. And in the meanwhile, I will try to reach out to Adata to see if we can maybe somehow figure out what had happened here. And if I know anything more, I will put an update in the description down below. Bye guys, and see you in the next one.